So good morning, and first of all, let me thank you because I can understand that this is very nice morning. We are in Sorrento, and so I do appreciate that you are here today with us in this, I think, very nice meeting. And I would like to thank all of you for the interactions yesterday that were, in my opinion, wonderful. And we are growing all together in such kind of events. So I have the responsibility of having a sort of a balance on 10 years of Poseidon. So I apologize because probably I have to come back to concept that we developed in the last days, yesterday, but I think that is very important to try to have a few ideas, few concepts, and to understand how to move in the next future in this field. This is my disclosure. So I had three questions in my mind. So the first, are we consistent with the original intention of Poseidon? So let's come back together to understand the reason why Poseidon had been generated. The second question is, what is the opinion by scientific point of view and in the clinical practice? Have the Poseidon criteria been validated, approved some way? And the first and the last question is the most consistent with my talk, but it is at the same time probably the most difficult. Should we do something else? Should we revise, integrate, implement the Poseidon criteria in the next future? So to come back to the past, this is our starting point. Our starting point was the Bologna classification for poor responders. So pay attention, we are talking about poor responders. This is a milestone because before this consensus, we had something like 40, 42 different definitions in literature about poor responder. Every morning somebody published a different definition of this category of patients. So this is a milestone because for the first time, people sat down and they said, yes, let's find a compromise. And this is the typical compromise because we have the classical system of three major criteria. And the combination of the criteria has to define the condition of poor ovarian response or condition of risk for poor ovarian response. And another milestone, because nowadays it seems clear, evident, but at that time, it was the first attempt to put ovarian reserve markers in a definition of poor response, because antral follicle count and anti-Mullerian hormone were not so much present previously. So is this solution good? I'm not here to say that Bologna is good or is bad. What I have to say is that Bologna is a combination of criteria. So the problem is that we have different combinations, meaning different profiles. So we run the risk of having in the same basket patients with totally different requirements. So one thing is a patient 35 years of age in terms of aneuploidy rates, and one thing is a patient 42 years of age, and they are in the same basket. When we design randomized control trial, we have to do power analysis. When we do power analysis, we consider the group as a whole. But at the end of the day, we have different subgroups in the study, different combination of patients, and all the combination, all the subgroups are underpowered for a given question. This is one of the reasons why, in my opinion, at least at my knowledge, no randomized control trial has proven that a given treatment is better than another in Bologna patients. And the second reason is that Bologna is able to identify, I think, the worst patients, very, very low prognosis patients. This is the starting point, because when we started to propose the Poseidon classification, we had two things in mind. The first was, are the low prognosis patients all the same, or we have different category of prognosis? Because with the Bologna system, we have poor responders and we have normal responders. We don't have something in the middle. So the first question was, do we have different categories with different requirements of patients with a low prognosis? And the second question is, can we identify subgroups of low prognosis patients that are homogeneous inside any single group, but sufficiently different each other? So that's the reason why we started from here. Have a look at this. It was a historical period where we were trying to understand how to identify different prognosis segments. And following the famous paper by Sesh Sunkara, it was clear that prognosis is related to the number of oocytes collected. Obviously, the more is the number of eggs, the more is the chance of having at least one euploid blastocyst. But independently of this, the more is the number of eggs, the more is the chance to be pregnant. I really like this paper by Dracopoulos because this paper identified 4 segments of prognosis. At any given age, the prognosis is different in terms of live birth rate if you have between 1 and 3 oocytes, before 4 and 9 oocytes, 10 and 15 oocytes, and more than 15. So for the first time, we had 4 categories: poor responders, suboptimal, ideal, we can say optimal, and hyper. It is very simple in our minds, but before this kind of approach, we had only poor responders and normal responders. So the number of eggs was the first point. And we tried to integrate this concept in Poseidon, trying to create different groups of low prognosis. And this was a very important starting point. Here is just to demonstrate that in terms of a cumulative live birth rate, the 4 categories are even more different in terms of results and success. So that's the reason why Poseidon was there, because if you have a look in group 1 and in group 2, we have one characteristic, that these patients have this kind of intermediate conditions, because group 1A and group are patients with less than 4 oocytes. Subgroup 1B are patients between 4 and 9 oocytes. The same for group 2. So here, for the first time, it has been integrated the concept that prognosis can be a little bit different according to the number of eggs. And the second characteristic of the groups 1 and 2 is that these patients are patients that basically move from adequate normal ovarian reserve test, but following stimulation, they had poor or suboptimal response. So 2 concepts here. The concept of unexpected suboptimal response or poor response, and the concept that there are differences according to the number of eggs retrieved. The group 3 and 4 are patients more consistent with the Bologna criteria because are patients where the poor ovarian response is expected because are patients with low anti-Müllerian hormone or low antral follicle count. So it seems to be something logical, but what I say usually is that we didn't invent anything. We just tried to propose a system that yes, can be good for clinical trials, can be good for understanding which kind of approach is working or not in any given population. But basically, this is a practical approach for medical procedures, for daily life. I want to come back just because sometimes concepts are there. The cutoff age for defining better or lower ovarian quality in Poseidon system is 35 years of age. If you remember Bologna, if you remember altogether Bologna criteria, the cutoff is 40. So, but 40 is too late. So you identify the worst patients in terms of aneuploidy rates and in terms of ovarian reserve. There is a difference between 35, 36, 37. There are a lot of data that have been published, a lot of data by Sandro, by the group, clearly demonstrating that any single year by year, above 35 years of age, there is a decrease in the rate of euploidies, and there is an acceleration, continuous acceleration. 36 is better than 37, than 30. Year by year, the aneuploidy rate dramatically changes above 35. So the groups 2 and the group 4 are patients that have more than 34 years of age, and so they are patients with low ovarian quality. So different scenarios, different groups. So if we want to summarize the contribution of Poseidon, is that Bologna moved from quantity, number of eggs, antral follicle count, anti-Mullerian hormone. These are variables defining a quantity of something. Poseidon integrated two concepts. The first is the ovarian sensitivity, meaning that if we have a patient that has a normal ovarian reserve and the ovarian response was poor or suboptimal, it means that you had an ovarian resistance. The ovarian sensitivity was lower. Why? Genetics, environment, bad procedures, not good alignment of follicles. There are so many, but there is something to work about because the ovarian response was lower than expected. And the other concept is that above 35, we exactly know how much euploidy rates change year by year, so we can personalize our treatment according to the expected euploidy rate, because the main concept of Poseidon, I would like to remind you, is that this is a system aimed to identify the number of eggs we need for having at least one euploid blastocyst. So, talking about ovarian sensitivity, this is the starting point of Poseidon. But following this, some concepts that had been mentioned in the past became more relevant. And so, concept has follicle output rate and FOI, follicle-to-eye oocyte rates, have been introduced and became more relevant year by year. So we had the possibility of better definition of hyposensitivity. In the first Poseidon elaboration, we just said, we can say, the ovarian reserve is quite normal. Why normal? Because it's different from the criteria that had been identified in Bologna. And it's quite normal, but despite this, we had less oocytes than expected. But with the Fortem FOI, we have the possibility to quantify this phenomenon. So we had examples like this yesterday, the day before. It's just to remind all together. We are in a case, for instance, where we had here 3 oocytes deriving from 4 pre-ovulatory follicles, but the starting point of this patient was 15 antral follicle count, in terms of antral follicle count. So it means that we didn't stimulate these patients properly, or it means that this patient has some genetics or something that makes these follicles more resistant than expected. But the number of eggs is 3. So if this patient is 35 years of age, the prognosis is anyway related to the number of eggs. But if I have to stimulate a second time these patients, I have to know that in the first stimulation, the potential of this patient was not exploited. So what I have to do here in a second stimulation is changing stimulation. I need higher doses of gonotrophins. I have to use recombinant. I have to add LH. There are so many possibilities. I have to test for pharmacogenomics for understanding better what to do. So we can do so many things, but the concept is here something wrong was in the stimulation. Do you think that a concept like this requires a meta-analysis, a randomized control trial? So we need a randomized control trial to prove that in the second stimulation we have to change something in our stimulation? The answer is no. But we have this mindset that we have to prove everything, even common sense, even if we have to cross the road with the red or green light, requires a meta-analysis. If we don't have a meta-analysis, there is no sufficient evidence that there is evidence that it doesn't work. And so we are in this kind of situation in a lot of scenarios in the reproductive medicine at the moment. Another patient, same age, again, 3 oocyte, again 4 preovulatory follicles, but in this patient, the starting point was totally different. 4 antral follicles, 4 preovulatory, and 3 oocyte. If she's 36, as the previous one, the prognosis is the same because they have the same number of eggs. But do you think that we have to change something in second stimulation? The sensitivity of the ovary in this case was perfect. In my opinion, this is a very good response, despite only 3 eggs, because the ovary responded consistently with the potential, and doctors were good in exploiting this potential. So this patient probably does not require in a second stimulation in case of failure, new approaches, probably requires just an accumulation program. More eggs, we need more eggs, so we have to stimulate twice in the same cycle. We have to accumulate. So this is incredible, it's so simple, but at the same time is something that changed the practical approach. So I go rapidly to the second question. Have been the Poseidon criteria validated? The problem is, what has to be validated? The fact that the patients are different? Okay, we did it. Because this is what has been presented yesterday by Sesh. You can see, first concept, once intermediate segments of prognosis have been identified, it was clear that they were incredibly high. They were incredibly high in terms of incidence and frequency. This is from different countries, more than 13,000 cycles analyzed. In patients groups 1 and 2 were even, it's incredible, in total 43%, the Poseidon patients were 43%, and vast majority of Poseidon patients were group 1 and 2. So we had a totally overlooked group of patients that for the first time emerged in our clinical practice as a clear, different segments requiring different approach. In the past, probably a given percentage of these patients would have been classified as normal, and another given percentage probably would have been classified as poor. And probably poor would have been treated in the same way and normal in the same way. This is another important, I think the most important evidence, that if you have looked to cumulative live birth rate, in any single, all the Poseidon groups are homogeneous inside, but if you move across the groups, among the groups, any single group is different from the other. So you have normal non-Poseidon patients, and you have 4 subgroups, even 6 subgroups of low prognosis, and these subgroups are different each other. Internally, they are homogeneous in terms of probably pathogenesis requirement, but if you compare each other, they are different. I think this is very, very important evidence. And so, in terms of treatment, what has been validated? Yes, probably we have trials, we have 9 randomized controlled trials, I will show you, the same in Bologna, but I don't think that this is the crucial point. I think that the crucial point, in my opinion, is having something that can be practical for medical procedures. Yes, this is the slide. This is what have been a lot of papers considering that the system was born 10 years ago and is not against, we have never been against, but it was alternative to very well established criteria from very important and respectable societies. This is a spontaneous consensus. So I'm very happy that in 10 years this criteria became quite, I think, adopted worldwide. But what we tried to do was to propose strategies that can be employed in a clinical practice. These are, I don't want you read all the slide. The concept is that if they are patients 1 and 2, everything is more based on strategies to optimize ovarian sensitivity. We are talking about synchronizing cycles, having the right gonotrophins and whatever. But if they are group 3 and 4, probably the most relevant strategy is accumulation. The same I showed you in the example I presented before. And there are some trials validating this, and it's common sense. And we also had inside the Poseidon a survey, including colleagues that were not experts worldwide, that were not in the Poseidon group, trying to have possibly an unbiased perspective. And we had a lot of statement, and it was not so easy to reach full agreement, but we reached full agreement, meaning more than 60% in favor, 66% in favor, on 17 statements. I don't want to read all the statements, I want to only focus on some one of the statements. I selected this because a lot of people asked us in the past, but what do you mean? You should have antral follicle count, or you should have anti-Mullerian hormone, both. So the best method is the one you are more confident with. So if you test ovarian reserve by AMH, or you test, you don't need to do both to say that a patient is Poseidon 1, 2, 3, or 4. Another concept is that what I mentioned before, that the incidence of Poseidon groups and the incidence of group 1 and 2 is higher than expected, and I'm in particular surprised by the relevance of groups 1 and 2. And so here is underlined the relevance of choosing right gonotrophins in patients where the sensitivity is compromised, and is mentioned the capability of the predictive system of the ART calculator, which became a very important tool for counseling, as Sandro will explain better later, and for counseling patients about the stimulation, because it set the expectation. Because if you talk with a patient and you say, hey, please, we need 10, we need 15 oocytes. This is the reason why we need this number of sites. Let's define together the best strategy for having a number of oocytes that is as close as possible to our ideal. And this is to show you that inside the Poseidon, and even with other experts, the relevance of pharmacogenomic approach seems to be there, but we were talking about it yesterday. The reason why we don't adopt pharmacogenomic approach in a clinical practice is long history, but I think that in the future, with an artificial intelligence approach, multi-gene analysis, carrier screening program, it will be, I think, a key and lock system for personalizing and perfectly matching patients and protocol. I'm going to finish. This is the final question. Should we upgrade? Should we do something? I think that Peter said, we don't want to say that is so relevant, it's just to give an example, but Peter said, but if we can you imagine to paint the bird in Mona Lisa, or if a system works, probably it's better not changing the system. And I totally agree, but it doesn't mean that we cannot improve something. And what Sesh said, Professor Sunkara said yesterday, why should we wait for the end of the stimulation to say that the patient is Poseidon 1 or 2? Now we have FOI, and so we can understand during stimulation that the number of follicles that are moving is lower than expected. This is a day 5 scanning. You can see that you have 15 antral follicles. On day 5, day 6, you see that only 50%, only 30% of these follicles overcame 10 millimeters. The other follicles remained smaller. So we are still in time for increasing the dose, for adding LH. So you can play in a different way. So introducing dynamic indicators of ion sensitivity. And another aspect is that in the same group, for instance, this is an example group, subgroup 2B, meaning of patients that have more than 35 years of age and the number of oocytes is between 4 and 9. Even in the same subgroup, you can have patients with a different ion sensitivity. So I think that even we have better clarify that in terms of patient stratification, the system works. But in terms of suggesting treatment, even in the same subgroups, the requirement of treatment can be different. But this is something that has to be optimized, is common sense. And I think that this is what I said yesterday, that in our community, every contribution, every idea, I repeat that I think we will be very happy if we could have Poseidon ambassadors in every country, representative for collecting data all together, to have a real-world data approach and understanding what's going on. So this is my last slide. What is my take-home message? Is ChatGPT. Why? Because I just did an experiment. It was very curious. I asked ChatGPT, I said, can you explain me the difference between Bologna and Poseidon criteria and try to make me understand if Poseidon is more efficient or not? I invite you to do it. This is what ChatGPT replied. So you can read. But I was very, very fascinated by this approach. Diagnostic, static in Bologna criteria, and in Poseidon, prognostic, dynamic, treatment-oriented. The oocyte quality is just related to 40 years of age in Bologna. Here is explicit because age is used to estimate oocyte quality and age-related euploidy rate. And so you can read, at the end of the day, I think that clinical usefulness limited in guiding treatment choices. Here in Poseidon, it provides different strategies for different subgroups of patients. So I thank you so much. I thank all the people and the guys working with me every day that make possible this kind of activities in research and clinical practice. And I do thank all the friends I don't want to mention one by one, but all the historical friends in this event, in Poseidon Group, but in the history of 10 years of this event. Thank you so much for the attention.